when you take one opportunity, you never know what else is, down the road.
More doors open up.
Yep. You can, and sometimes you can't predict it. I had never.
Welcome to the Laws of Business podcast. Here, we will share the skills you need to make your business a success. Learn about goal setting, productivity, time management, marketing, and much more. Hear inspiring stories with today's best business leaders and join a hub of thousands of passionate entrepreneurs across the world. And now, here's your host, Jamil Jama.
Hello there, everybody, and welcome to the Law of Business podcast, where I chat with today's most successful entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Jamil Jama, and today I'm interviewing Tracey Minutolo. Tracey Minutolo is a side hustle coach, helping motivated action takers to design, launch, and grow profitable side businesses they are passionate about. And before we start the interview, I'll give you Tracey Minutolo's bio. Tracey Minutolo has been a side hustler since before there was a name for it. She was a full-time lab supervisor who started a virtual assistant business almost 2 years ago, serving podcasters with purpose. Working with one client in particular opened her eyes to the possibility of coaching, and now she works directly with motivated, mostly 9-to-5ers, to design and launch profitable service-based side businesses centered at the intersection of their passions and their existing skills. It's a real pleasure to welcome Tracey Minutolo. How's it going, Tracey?
Really great. Thank you so much for having me, Jamil. Appreciate it.
First of all, Tracey, I want to thank you so much for taking your time out, for getting up real early, because I know it's early over there, to do this interview. I appreciate it so much.
Of course. Side hustlers, you either get up early or you stay up late to work on your business.
It's the first time I've heard. It's a real cool concept, and it's the first time I've seen this. I haven't seen anybody else doing this. Are you not doing this?
Side hustlers or?
No, I know you're not. I know you're not the first side hustler.
No. What concept?
Teaching it online. You must be the first one, I think, because I haven't seen nobody else do this. Because it makes real sense. Because if somebody's starting out, especially an internet marketing business or a business in general, they have to side hustle. They have to keep their job and then side hustle for the most part, don't they? Before they can go full time on their business, right?
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense for the large majority of folks out there, especially if you are coming from the 9-to-5 world and that's pretty much all you've known, which is the case for, me, for one. I have been working in my field, which is actually microbiology, since I graduated quite some years ago. And I've had different side hustles from part-time jobs to selling things on eBay, all sorts of little odd side jobs. But in terms of a side business, that wasn't something that even occurred to me until much more recently. And now it's been almost 3 years since I've been doing the side business thing. But yeah, so it absolutely makes sense to start out and kind of dip your toes in the water and find out what actually will help you in terms of a business idea that will actually help you meet your goals financially, but something that you can actually see yourself doing and actually get in there and start doing it. And if you actually enjoy it, I don't think people always have a clear sense for what's going to meet all those criteria when they get started.
So Tracey, before you started Side Hustlers Haven, it's called Side Hustlers Haven, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's my Facebook group, the Side Hustlers Haven.
So Tracey, before you started teaching people how to side hustle, can you tell us your backstory, please, from when you started until where you are now, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So about 3 years ago, that's when the idea first kind of dawned on me that I wanted to start a side business versus just continuing to, maybe do a part-time job or selling things or just, odds and ends. I actually wanted to start something that was going to be 100% me and something that I had control over and something that was going to be sustainable. So it took me a while to land on the idea that I ended up running with, but it ended up being something that actually came out of some volunteer work that I had done. So I had done some work locally with some nonprofits and ended up learning a lot about social media and working on WordPress websites, updating websites and all kinds of stuff like that behind the scenes, just because nobody else in those organizations wanted to deal with it. So I was a volunteer and I was like, sure, I'll take that. Sure, I'll run with it. Sounds great. So I ended up really enjoying what I was learning about just social media in general, primarily Facebook based, a little bit of Twitter, just started getting in there and learning that. I loved WordPress. And so when I was getting ready to do the side business, for whatever reason, I didn't even consider that skill set at all. Probably because I hadn't been paid for it. It was all volunteer. But I was really, really big into personal development podcasts. Big time. I listened to podcasts like crazy on my commute to work and so forth. And eventually, after a lot of going back and forth, I landed on that idea that I wanted to provide virtual support for podcasters. So podcasters who, the podcast is an arm of the business. It's a marketing channel. It's a way for them to get their message out there. These are folks that are not, hobbyist podcasters. These are folks with businesses. And so I had been following several podcasters and, I was on their email list and had a little bit of a rapport with them. And so when I was getting ready to do this, I sent a couple of emails out to the ones that I had had conversations with previously, and basically just said, hey, I'm thinking of doing this thing. I'm thinking of providing these services for podcasters. And, my background is in the lab. I'm a scientist, so I'm detail oriented, and I have these skills. And my goal now is to kind of match up what I can do with what's actually needed in the market. So can you tell me if you've ever hired a VA? What have you used a VA for? What was your experience? What do you look for? And I got some great responses back, and 2 of those folks actually turned into clients for me. So it was really, really awesome. I ended up working for a career coach who, at that time he was still working full time and, in his full time job and growing his business on the side. But he was at the point where he was ready to start growing and, start at least adding 1 or 2 team members. And so that was probably for me the most, I don't know, just I feel like almost like it was like an apprenticeship. I got in there and I was, learning on the job, and kind of, everything that I had and all my skills, I put those to work, and he would teach me anything that I didn't know. So I got to kind of learn all about, what it's like to run an online business from behind the scenes. So setting up podcast interviews, doing research on the guests, doing all of the promotion for the interviews. The only thing I didn't do was the editing of the episodes. But then also kind of getting in behind the scenes as he was building his courses. He had me doing worksheets and giving feedback on the course material, and kind of doing a little bit of, behind the scenes, just testing things out. And so between that and the community management, it was just, I couldn't get enough of it. I was in love. I was like, this is just awesome. And so that opportunity ended up opening the door for me into coaching. This particular coach decided to launch a side business course. So he was primarily a career coach, but he recognized that folks out there, he was getting a lot of questions about side businesses. So he built this side business course, and he actually asked me if I wouldn't mind helping him with that, with the course materials, and then eventually with coaching. So I actually was able to get in there and facilitate some small group mastermind groups. And so it was really, really neat to kind of get in there and work with people in the group setting, and a little bit of one-to-one on their side business journeys. And I was hooked from that point forward. So I worked with him for a little while longer, and then eventually I went out and just kind of broke out on my own. And that's what led me to where I am today.
That's a real awesome story, Tracey. Congratulations with your success.
Oh, thank you. It's been a journey, I'll tell you. And this is what I tell all of my clients, and just make sure that I'm constantly, putting this message out there, is really just sometimes, when you take one opportunity, you never know what else is, down the road.
More doors open up.
Yep. You can, and sometimes you can't predict it. I had never thought about coaching. It wasn't even on my mind. I just knew I wanted to earn a couple of extra bucks on the side. And I have this social media, skill, and I love podcasts. So let me put that together. And that, that
it's
really
like,
just
it's like how I met you and interviewed you. I interviewed one guest, and then he interviewed me to Julia, and then Julia introduced me to you, basically.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yep. And I met Julia because I've done work with Mark Mawhinney, who is somebody that was mentioned on one of the shows that I was working behind the scenes on as a VA. So yeah, it's all connected.
Yeah, definitely. So Julia, how does someone generate and evaluate side business ideas in order to capitalize on the best?
Yeah, so there are a lot of different ways where you can generate side business ideas. I think for somebody who's completely new to this, who's coming, right from the 9-to-5 world and is just starting to entertain this idea, some of the best places to look would be, obviously in what you're trained in. So, if you are a writer, or you're doing something in marketing for your full-time job, it might be, kind of an easy thing for you to see. And other places to look would just be like, what are your hobbies? What are you absolutely like obsessed with? What are you spending your time on that you're not getting paid for necessarily? What are you teaching other people? That's another great thing to look at. But the key is that it's got to be something you enjoy. The thing about a side business is that it's on the side, which, sounds kind of silly, but, I think a lot of people run into trouble when they pick something that's, based on the fact that they're like, I can earn money from this. That's it. What you're not looking at or what you're not understanding is that, you're going to have to spend, a minimum of 10 hours a week on this. I don't know of many side businesses, at least in the beginning, where you can spend less than 10 hours a week. It's usually between 10 and 20. And it's not just the time, it's also the energy and the bandwidth that goes into building, and sustaining a side business. So in my mind, you better find something that you love. I always give the example of, and I feel so terrible with this example because there might be people that love this, but, accounting. So if you do that and then you want to do a side business that's something related to that, and that you don't really like your day job, but you're doing this thing that you also don't like, it just ends up being terrible. So you kind of have to dig deep. And another place that if you're really struggling for ideas, another really, really great source of ideas, or at least information that can spark ideas, is that you've got this network of friends and family and coworkers and prior coworkers and other folks in your life that you can reach out to, and you can ask them a couple of questions. One of the things that I find really valuable is to do this exercise where you find at least 5 people, more is better, and you ask them, what are my biggest strengths? What would you completely trust me to help you with? And you see what comes back. Sometimes it's really surprising.
Tracey, what about trying different businesses until you find one that you love? Is that a good idea, or would that take too long?
Well, I think if you can gather up a lot of information on the front end and try to understand, where your strengths are, and if you can, do an exercise like I was just describing, and if you can look at your past work history or your volunteer, you could just kind of take an inventory of your skills, you're able to make a relatively informed decision as far as something that would be the best place to start. And once you have that, and once you've got your idea and you realize, okay, I really like this, I can see myself doing this, then you want to do a little bit of research and make sure that it's something that's actually, in demand out in the marketplace. So you want to look for somebody who's doing something similar, and see what they're doing and see what kinds of, rates that they're charging. Is this going to actually help you meet your income goals with this? Is this going to be worth your time? So once you have all of those things in place, now you've got what you need to make an informed, intelligent decision about which path to choose. And at that point, jump in and take action. Nothing is going to be perfect. And so I agree with you. Yeah, it is a matter of, trying things. You might find, like I found with the VA business, that wasn't going to be the be all end all. I loved doing the work that I was doing. I loved being immersed, in the world of online business. And I loved everything about it. But what I realized through the experience was that I kind of wanted to lead my own tribe. And, working behind the scenes was one thing, but I was really, really excited about leading my own tribe. And that's something I had no clue about until I actually got started. So absolutely agree with you. But I think you can save a lot of time and frustration if you do a little bit of work on the front end to understand what are the best options to get started with.
And earlier, Tracey, you mentioned networking. There's a quote. Before I ask you the next question, I'd just like to start with a quote.
Mm-hmm.
The quote is, "Your network creates your net worth." And also, no man is an island, or no one is an island. So we all need to network. How does someone build a strong network and leverage it?
Yeah. So, well, that's another thing as well. So you have to be willing to put yourself out there. You have to be willing to connect with people online and offline. I think that's probably a lot of folks, especially since so much of, the world seems to be moving toward online business. It can be really tempting to hide behind your keyboard. But I think what really makes the difference and what really makes the impression is when you reach out and say, hey, can we chat over Skype? Can we kind of, if you're meeting a new connection and you make that kind of connection and you want to maybe pursue something with somebody, to actually take the next step and have a conversation, have a real conversation with them. So I think that actually is what's going to make the difference, in the world at this point, because, what I'm finding with technology is that people are still very much, you have this reach and you have this capability to reach more people than ever before. But what we're really longing for is that real connection. And that doesn't really come from, mass mailing people necessarily, or just posting a bunch of things out on social media. It comes from really reaching out and having a meaningful connection around something that's, a mutual interest or, a mutual kind of idea that you can
like
actually
getting a telephone number. But it's good to talk on the phone as well, I would say.
Yeah. And that's
telephone number straight away, I don't think, but after a while you need to talk on the phone. You can't just be
Absolutely. To not be afraid to do that, to not be afraid to hop on a Skype call with somebody and to really get out there in front of them. And, one thing that I love to do is connect people. So if I hear of somebody that is in the market for something or wants something, or just if I feel like, okay, you should really talk to my other friend here, I'll introduce people left and right. And that's just an awesome thing, because then other people will do the same for you. And, there's no expectation. You're not doing it with any agenda. I just think, it's a fun thing to do, to bring other people together and to kind of create community and to kind of see what you can build. But yeah, that's really what it comes down to. And when I'm talking about, building your network, it really needs to be like of people that, you've spoken to face for the most part, or at least had like some significant conversations with, over email and messaging, like to have something there. The grounds for
going to events. Sorry to cut you off, Tracey. I find going to events, you meet a lot of people that you can network with.
Oh, absolutely. And that's something I actually would like to create. I just haven't really had the time recently to kind of go further with this, but I want to create something for side hustlers in my city here. Like I would love to create an actual meetup here in San Diego, and it's been on the back burner for me. But that is something absolutely, because again, I think at the end of the day,
meetup.com, you could do something on Meetup, I suppose.
Yep. Exactly. So, the online world, it's great. It's great for, just expanding your reach, getting your word out there to a large number of people. But when you start to see who is resonating with that message, you start to see who's coming back into your world, then reach out to them, build a connection with them, take that further, take it one step further.
That's awesome, Tracey. And Tracey, I'd like to start with a quote for the next question. For the next question, it's a quote by Jim Rohn, the famous Jim Rohn. Either run the day or the day runs you. That's a quote by Jim Rohn. So Tracey, how can someone effectively manage their time and energy while balancing their day job with their side hustle and doing it well?
Yeah, and I think that really comes down to what works for you and knowing yourself for the most part, but you actually have to spend a little time, upfront doing a little bit of planning. So a lot of side hustlers, and this actually happened to me, so that's why I'm keenly aware of this. You don't really plan on how much time and energy the side hustle is actually going to take up in your life, how much space it's really going to take in your life when you're first getting started. It can be really easy to underestimate. When I first started my VA business, I didn't really do a great job of communicating that to the folks in my life, that I was going to be taking on this new thing. And, suddenly I was expected to be places, and I was like, well, I'm finishing this thing that I'm working on. And, I just didn't have a great sense for how much time it was going to take. So this was a series of adjustments that I had to make for myself personally. And now what came out of that is I actually have developed it's basically a modified time blocking approach. So if folks have heard of time blocking is basically like zero-based budgeting. You would think about for your finances. If you have your paycheck at the beginning of the month, you account for every dollar. Where is each dollar going? It's going to, it's assigned to a particular job. So you can do the same thing with time. There's a finite number of hours in the week. So you can take your week at a glance and you can design your week based on where you expect to be spending that time. So I've developed a modified time blocking method. But the first part of that is actually to understand first and foremost where the time is being spent right now. So that is the first step that I walk through with all of my clients, is to have them track their time for at least a week. And we're not talking down to the minute. We're talking like 15-minute or half an hour increments, just try to get a sense for where the time is going. So when you go back and you take a look at that after you've finished tracking, you can usually find pockets of time that can be repurposed for your side hustle. And I mentioned earlier in the interview that you want to plan on at least 10 hours a week, at least in the beginning. If you really want to, make any kind of progress on a realistic, progress on a reasonable time scale, you really do need to plan on that 10 hours, 10 to 15. So that's the first step, is really to understand where you can pull that time from. And then you start to build your sort of template future state week with all this information, here. So you've tracked your time currently. And then you start to think about the types of changes that you want to make. So you're building in the side hustle time, but you're also going to be building in, time for yourself, time for any kind of wellness activities that you have in your life, family time, everything. Make sure you've got your fitness, time built in. And of course, sleep is important. So you can actually take the week and you can plan it out in blocks, including all of these different elements for the week, so that you actually have everything covered there. And then the next step, which I strongly advise folks never to skip this step, is to take this, this week that you've designed and share it with the people in your life that are actually going to be impacted by it. So, your spouse, your kids, your friends. So my friends and I get together every Sunday. So I made sure that I tell them, Sunday mornings, I actually am working on my side business and I'm free after this time. So we have, that clear, and there's no expectation that I'm available before that. So, and vice versa, for the business, I'm usually done by 1 p.m. And from then on, it's Sunday fun day pretty much. So you do the work to understand where you can plug in your side hustle time. You build in everything else that's important to you and that you need in order to be healthy and happy and to sustain yourself. And then you share that with the people in your life that are going to be affected by it. And you make sure that you collaborate on it and you get agreement on it. So the first step is to track where your time is currently being spent. So once you've got all of that in place, you can easily see where you can plug in additional time for your side business. Maybe there's time in the evening that you were spending on the couch watching Game of Thrones or something like that, but maybe you could repurpose that hour or two and build that in for your side hustle. Or maybe it's a matter of getting up a little bit early. And the next step is building out this, ideal week that you want to actually have to include your side business time, as well as anything else that you need for wellness, anything else that you need to be happy and healthy and to sustain yourself. And then beyond that, you want to share your week with anybody in your life that is going to be affected by how you spend your time. So those are people that are, in your family, your friends. Just make sure that you share that and you get agreement on it, and so that there are no expectations that you won't be able to meet and so forth.
Can people still side hustle while they're in debt though? Because I'll give you a couple of quotes before I ask you the question. You can't be in debt and win. It doesn't work. Also, there's another quote: it's better to go to bed hungry than to wake up in debt, which I don't really agree on. But
yeah, I don't know if I agree with that one either.
And there's many bad side effects of being in debt. There's bankruptcy, there's eviction, there's foreclosure, and there's also emotional troubles, and sometimes, if it's real bad, even suicidal tendencies. So how can someone crush their debt? Because it's difficult to be a side hustler and be in debt as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I think for at least my philosophy, and I know there's a lot of other folks out there that may have a different way of looking at this, and I respect them and I appreciate that. But for me, just having debt over my shoulders is like a black cloud, and it impacts, it impacts my well-being. It's not, it is kind of like a burden. So I recommend for everybody to clear up debt, not before starting a side hustle. That doesn't really make sense. But, if you are generating additional income through your hustle, that, if there's a way that you can, plan out whatever it is that you're working on, whatever your goals are. And this is individual. This is different for everybody, but that, you are focusing on the debt and you are working to, reduce it and eliminate it, because that is what will actually allow you to make it to the next step and then begin wealth building.
Definitely. So their first goal should be to get rid of debt.
Right.
It can be slowly as well. Can't it? It doesn't have to be all at once. They don't have to sacrifice, right? Just be slowly.
I would say just have a plan, and stick to it. And be okay with the timelines. Obviously it is very individual, and people have different risk tolerance as well. For me, it just makes me very nervous. Like having debt makes me nervous, but some people are, it's different for them.
That's awesome, Tracey. And Tracey, I want to thank you so much for taking your time out to do this interview. You gave so much value. If anybody wanted to contact you, where can they contact you?
Yeah, definitely. And thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. The best place to get in touch and to kind of jump into my world and see what's going on is to join the Side Hustlers Haven. And it is a Facebook group, but if you go to sidehustlershaven.com, it'll take you right there. We are basically, the way I like to think about it is it's basically training for the side hustler who's out there wanting to make the transition from side hustle to turning it into your main hustle. So you will learn skills, everything from marketing and sales to, video. We have somebody coming in next week who's going to be talking about live streaming. We've got somebody today who's talking about organic marketing on Facebook. So you'll get all of these powerful skills, and we do live workshops in the group. It's just an awesome place to be. So Side Hustlers Haven. And then, of course, you can always find me at my website, which is traceyminutolo.com. That's TraceyMinutolo.com.
That's really cool, Trace. I really love what you're doing, teaching people how to side hustle, because that's so important. And I want to thank all the listeners for tuning in. If you enjoyed this interview, please share it. Please also leave a comment and subscribe. And I'm Jamil Jama. This is The Law of Business, and that was Tracey Minutolo. Thank you all very much for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Laws of Business podcast. Find out more about us on thelawsofbusiness.com. Thank you for being a part of our journey.